I thought I'd do a quick video. Got a school thing on this evening, so while there's still light, and just before we get ready, I thought I'd talk about personality traits. And look, I hear it all the time. Everyone probably hears it internally as well as externally all the time too. We tend to kind of label ourselves all sorts of labels. Sometimes they are helpful, sometimes they are not so helpful, and a lot of the time they're actually not true, because they're not looking at you as a person holistically. They're often snippets of time or repeated set of behaviors that have been more prominent than others. So I could say, for example, I am a calm person, and I just got a text message, that's why I looked up. And whilst that is true some of the time, it is obviously not true all of the time. And equally, I could describe myself as an angry person, because I get angry. I do anger pretty well. However, I am not angry 100% of the time either. And so whenever we assign different traits to ourselves as a person or to others, they're not really an accurate reflection of the whole being. And like on my ship, in the book, so I could keep getting distracted, there are the crew, and like we all have access to all of the crew. Those are kind, caring, compassionate, loving, playful, curious, creative, angry, irritable, anxious, avoidant, people pleasing, all of those. And it just depends on the context which crew member is going to be, the loudest, the one that we focus on. And so when things are going well in life and it's kind of smooth sailing, it's easier to access the kind, compassionate, caring, loving, playful crew members. And then when we are going through storms, or life is more challenging, or the tides are low, fog, whatever, other crew members will become louder, the ones that tend to be activated around fear or uncertainty. And I mean, those are irritable, angry, anxious, depressed, avoidant crew members, because the conditions have changed and they tend to become stronger around uncertainty, fear, and things like that. And so when I hear people say, like, I am anxious, I'm like, no, you're not. Your anxiety, tends to be activated under certain conditions. When I hear people say, I used to be calm and now I'm angry, like, no, you're not. It just, anger rises under certain conditions, and those conditions could be unmet needs, could be, illness, injury, could be a lot of situational stresses, could be like, fear, uncertainty, could be grief and loss, could be a whole bunch of things. And like I'll wrap that up in a minute. When we do look at kind of like the behaviors and the ways that we prefer to be versus the ways that we prefer not to be. Like I would always refer back to the compass, and the compass is like your values, and that's basically your core, that what matters to you at its core, and they're going to be different for everybody. I mean, there will be similarities, but we all have different values, different set of priorities of those values as well. And everybody should know this, otherwise you don't actually know what is like important to you, and therefore you're much more easily influenced, or you could easily adopt values that others kind of place onto you rather than what's actually truly important to you. And when it comes to the compass, it's good. It kind of points in a direction. It's stable over time. It doesn't change because conditions change. However, it doesn't get you to be those things or to behave in that way. And what does is the keel on the ship. And the keel represents integrity. And we all know, hopefully, there's a level of awareness where we are in line with our values, and we are kind of acting from, behaving, being, in alignment with the things that are important to us. And hopefully, when we're not in alignment, when we tend to sway away from those things that are at the core of who we are. And it's not about perfection here. I talked about in the last video. It is basically recognizing it and then realigning. Not to always be aligned, because that's just impossible. It's a lot easier to be true to who we are when things are going well. It's easy to access that. It's much more challenging to stay in integrity when we are dealing with lots of situational stresses, storms, uncertainty, challenges, difficulties, when we're depleted. So it's not like shaming or blaming us. It's just going, okay, let's bring our ways of being, acting, behaving to be more back aligned with what's important to us, rather than focusing on which crew member is actually the loudest at any given moment. So just to finish off, I'm not excusing bad behavior. Just a sec. I don't do that for myself. I don't do that for others. I don't think that's helpful in any way, because it prevents us from actually reflecting, it prevents us from repairing, and it prevents us from putting things in place so it doesn't become a repetitive thing. And so not excusing bad behavior. I'm also not into like shaming and blaming, because that actually isn't very helpful in terms of reflecting, repairing, or putting things in place either. So next time you want to, put a label on yourself, maybe a better question might be, which part of the ship am I looking at? Am I looking at the crew? Am I looking at the compass? Am I looking at the tides? That's not part of the ship, but what am I actually looking at when I'm describing this trait that I'm seeing? And if it's not helpful, what can I actually do to get myself back in alignment with my compass? Anyway, see ya.